world of combined driving. To get started in this sport, you will need some special equipment, which will, of course, include a vehicle. Many people begin with a moderately priced two-wheel cart, such as these variations of Meadowbrooks. However, if a pair of horses is in your future, a four-wheel vehicle is required. Part of a combined event is a formal presentation where you are judged on cleanliness and appropriateness of driver, horse, harness, and vehicle. It does take a good team of people to properly turn out a driver. Not only does your turnout need to be impeccably clean, but every piece of brass must shine. It must be polished good enough to reflect the judge's smile as well as to catch their eye. After a final going over, it's off to presentation. The second phase is the dressage test, where various breeds of horses and ponies can compete equally together. In dressage, you are judged on you and your horse's ability to execute straightness of lines and roundness of circles on a predetermined course. Dressage is a word used to describe correct positioning and proper execution of movement of the horse. The horse should move with lightness, freedom, and harmony. Drivers are also judged on their style of driving, as well as the accuracy of their test and general command of their horses. In the lower levels of dressage, a 40 by 80 meter arena is used. This is equivalent to about 132 by 264 feet. This arena is marked at equal distances around the perimeter by a series of letters. These letters are used as landmarks for different patterns of various tests the drivers may be asked to perform. Except for at the training level, the dressage test must be driven from memory, with no outside assistance or help from an accompanying groom. Pairs, as with all multiples, are judged as a team unit and not as individual horses. The matching of strides and rhythm is given greater importance than that of matching color. The groom must sit in their appropriate seat, behind the driver and usually facing the rear of the vehicle. Since this is required for all multiples, driving lends itself to being a family affair. For safety reasons, grooms are required to accompany all multiple hitches, such as pairs or teams of 4 horses. This is necessary in the event of a competitor developing trouble and allows the driver to keep hold of the reins while the groom attends the horses. Here is a complete training level course. All dressage tests start with a halt at the center of the arena and a salute to the judge. After a nod from the judge, the test begins. The training level is, as its name implies, a test of the horse and driver who are just being introduced to the combined driving sport. Compared to the upper levels, training level tests are simple and short. This is the only level where the dressage test may be called, encouraging the novice driver as well as the green horse. The experience should be positive for both horse and driver. The competitor is known as the whip, and as the name implies, the driver must carry one at all times while driving. The lash of the whip should be long enough to reach the shoulder to the furthest horse. The voice along with the whip are important aids in driving, taking the place of the rider's seat and legs as aids. At the training level, drivers will be judged and scored on how well they have trained the green horse to move forward freely at a walk and at the trot while accepting the bit. The horse should be relaxed and move smoothly through these transitions. In this test, the driver is asking the horse for a lengthened walk. A working walk, and a working trot. The working trot is defined as one which the horse goes forward freely, engaging its hind legs. The hind feet should step into the hoof prints left by the front feet. Also required are 2 40-meter circles, one in each direction. These circles should remain round, not oval or square. The horse should bend with its spine in the arc of the circle. test now ends with another halt, followed in 3 or 4 seconds by a rein back of 3 or 4 steps, and then a final salute to the judge. Next, you will see a complete preliminary test. The next level in combined driving is the preliminary division, where more development and skill are expected from both horse and driver. It is expected that both will have a greater degree of balance, suppleness, and rhythm. The horse should be working more from the haunches and with greater energy. These ponies are still expected to accept and be on the bit while going more forward. If a competitor makes a mistake of the course or pattern, a bell is rung warning them of their error. They are then allowed to return to that point and try to correct their mistake. Where this doesn't eliminate the driver, every deviation is penalized. In the training test, we saw circles that consisted of 40 meters, the exact width of the arena. Preliminary demands greater skill to deliver a smaller 30-meter one. The test may also call for a 20-meter half circle, such as a driver is performing here. Here we see a perfect example of a pair working as a unit, as opposed to two single ponies working side by side. Another movement or gait not seen in training is the lengthened trot. This trot differs from the working trot in that the ponies will cover more ground while still maintaining the same rhythm. Their frame should lengthen, lower, and of course stay on the bit. Drivers should be careful not to overdrive this gait, as it is a preparation for the extended trot required in the more advanced levels of dressage. A good energetic walk is also a part of this test. It should never meander or have the appearance of being out for a stroll. After executing the perfect test, the pair is rewarded with the knowledge that the fun has only just begun. With this phase completed, the scores will be tallied and notes compared. All will know they have done their best, and that's what combined driving is really all about. Another phase in combined driving is the obstacle course. This is a test of speed and obedience demonstrated by driving a course without dislodging any penalty balls. The obstacle course is usually run as the last segment of a combined driving event. However, a special allowance is sometimes given to accommodate events taking place over a 2-day span instead of the traditional 3 days. The intent and purpose of the obstacle competition is to test the horse's fitness and training after the rigors of the marathon section. But this also is a test of the horse's obedience, as well as the skills and memory of the driver. Just like the dressage test, this course must be driven from memory with no outside assistance. There are numerous ways on how to run and judge an obstacle competition, but in combined driving it's judged as one of fault. That is, drivers are given a set maximum amount of time in which to finish a preset course without incurring any penalties. Competitors receive a map or outline of the course pattern which they will have studied and memorized. The course may include as many as 20 numbered sets of cones. Each set of cones is known as a gate and will be marked by a red and white flag. These color markings help the driver determine the correct direction that the gate is to be driven. Here is a course done in its entirety. The object of this part of the combined driving event is not in winning this phase, but to drive a clear round under the time limit. The obstacle results are used in the overall score for your event placing. It is the tie score breaker for the other two phases. A clear round is one in which the competitor has driven the course within the time limit and has not incurred any penalties. Dropping a ball from a cone is only one of the penalties facing a driver. It is very tempting to look back over one's shoulder, but that has never replaced a displaced ball yet. Penalties may also be accumulated for going over the allowed time. A percentage of the penalty point is added for every second the driver is over the time limit. Whenever a course offers an extended straight stretch, you will see many take advantage of this and make up for lost time. Another of the frequent errors in a test is a driver temporarily getting lost on course. If this happens and a driver circles or crosses their path before going through the next gate, a penalty will result. A fault will be assessed if a competitor has a horse refuse, either by stopping or backing up in front of a gate. Drivers of multiples may require greater skill to manipulate not one but several horses through gates that measure only several inches wider than the wheel track. It is a penalty for the competitor who breaks down in either the vehicle or harness that requires the groom or driver to dismount. However, the clock is stopped while repairs are made. You can see with this driver how exciting the obstacle course can be. One of the multiple elements found at these lower levels is an L-shaped obstacle. It consists of two gates driven at a right angle. Care must be taken not to disturb any part of this element. Many types of gates may be included in a course. They may be a multiple consisting of 2 or more gates, or they may incorporate a bridge or water to cross as well. A more difficult multiple in this test is a U-turn. This maneuver is not easy even at a slow trot, and is where your dressage work comes into play. It's a hard task for the horse who doesn't know how to bend. This driver is demonstrating an outstanding job at this tight obstacle and still manages to make it look easy. No matter how fast the test is driven, it must be driven cleanly to count and still be in the running. When ties do occur, a drive-off can be exciting as the fastest clear round determines the winner. The marathon phase tests the training and stamina of the horse, and also the driver and navigator as a team. The first section of the marathon consists of timed road work, followed by a walk section and vet check. After passing the vet's inspection, the navigator's work truly begins. It's their job to maneuver the driver through a series of hazards correctly. A hazard can be natural or man-made obstacles which require the driver to go through, around, and between narrow openings called gates. These gates are designated alphabetically and must be driven in order. This hazard portion of the marathon is called Section E. Like the other 2 sections, A the trot and B the walk, Section E will have a maximum allowed time, but only Sections A and E have minimum times. There are checkpoints and timers between each section, as well as at the entry of each hazard. Official timers will record the time taken for each phase at these checkpoints. In the upper levels, time taken in the hazard zone is also recorded. Levels of competition, you will see from 1 to 6 hazards to negotiate. The distance between each hazard is about 1 kilometer. The overall marathon distance is as much as 10 kilometers in training and 16 kilometers for preliminary. Usually about half of this distance is in Section E. If a competitor should become stuck in a hazard, it may be necessary to put the navigator down to free the entanglement. This is another reason to have that extra person along. If a repair is needed, the navigator may make the repairs with the aid of the spares kit that is part of the required equipment that must be carried on the vehicle. A spares kit must consist of a rein and a trace or a splice and punch for both. When driving a pair, a single tree must also go along, but a well-experienced driver will also carry such items as a good knife, extra nuts and bolts, tools to effect repairs, and the like. No two drivers seem to drive any hazard alike. Each has what they believe is the shortest route to complete all required gates. There is no best way. It varies from driver to driver, according to the driver's skill and their horse's abilities. Hazards, whether natural or man-made, must meet certain standards for height and for width. They must make allowances for the largest of turnouts as well as the smaller single ones. At the training level, hazards are not timed or judged other than to see that all required gates are correctly negotiated. No penalties are given, and the experience should encourage both novice horse and driver. Does the navigator have to keep the driver on course, but also on time? Penalties are incurred for being too fast as well as too slow. The marathon is to test the horse's stamina, fitness, and training, but as the heat of the competition increases, the memory is put to test. A good navigator will keep their driver on course, on time, and fill in any lapses of memory. Although sometimes the hardest part for a driver is understanding the excited directions of their navigator. Sometimes the navigator is required to use their weight to counterbalance the vehicle to keep all wheels on the ground. The preliminary levels are for the more experienced, and therefore time the second they enter the hazard zone. The greater speeds at which they drive these hazards makes the carriages more vulnerable to turning over. This is why you will see the navigator shift their weight from side to side, counterbalancing the vehicles. With enough practice, a groom can even bounce the carriage around a tight obstacle. Difficult obstacle for horses, often requiring additional persuasion. Drivers of pairs may have an advantage over the single driver when it comes to getting horses' feet wet. Usually you can count on one of them enticing the other in. Here you see just how quickly a hazard can be done. Driver leaves the water hazard to the sound of applause. The audience is always appreciative of a wonderful job such as this. With hazards completed, it's off to the finish line. After an exciting competition come the well-deserved awards. Drivers receive awards in each division. And the navigators are not overlooked. If this video hasn't hooked you on combined driving yet, let's place you in the seat right alongside a driver. Dornbecker Country Days.
Okay, folks, we have a treat for you now. We have the Woodbrook Hunt. They are making their way up here. They're laying the direction. And again, I want to remind you.
Right on, Crystal. Come on. And walk.
Get Callan pictures.
Go home, Crystal. I don't blame you.